Thank you. So one of the things I heard this morning is that there's a very fine line between craziness and courage. I'm a 55-year-old, badly dressed man talking to you today about fashion. I think that puts me firmly in the bracket of courage. So I'm going to start with a question to you all. I'm sure many of you go sort of shopping at the weekends to Primark, H&M, Zara, and you buy great fashionable clothing incredibly cheaply for wearing. So the question I'm going to ask is this: is fast fashion a good thing or not? So I'd like to see a show of hands. Who here thinks that fast fashion is a good thing? This was not what I was expecting. Who thinks it's a bad thing? That's interesting, because we're addicted to fast fashion. In fact, people think that the number of clothes we buy will grow by around 60% by 2030. And what's not to like about the industry? It sells itself on style, creativity, beauty, glamour. It contributes an enormous £23 billion to the UK economy, and it employs 800,000 people. It's a way of living for many of us, and it's something that's part of our mainstream. But sometimes courage is about questioning industries such as this. Sometimes courage is asking the questions that industries like this don't want you to ask. So let's have a look at the flip side of the industry. Let's have a think about what's the social and environmental impact of getting these cheap clothes onto our high street. And sometimes these implications are harsh. In April 2013, the Rana Plaza factory in Bangladesh, garment factory, collapsed. 1,000 garment workers were killed and 2,500 were injured. They were making clothes that are ending up on our high street. And unfortunately, the situation hasn't really improved since then. In fact, a recent survey found that 50% of garment workers are not paid the minimum wage. And actually, the discrimination against women garment workers is even higher. And it's not just the social impacts. The fashion industry is believed to be the fourth most polluting industry in the world, the fourth most polluting. It creates carbon dioxide emissions. Carbon dioxide leads to climate change, and we've seen what the horrific impacts of climate change can be through the recent storms in the Caribbean, the hurricanes in America. The amount of carbon that the industry will create in a year by 2030 will be the equivalent of driving 230 million cars on the road. And it's not just the carbon it creates, it also creates a lot of waste. So only 20% of the clothing that we get through gets recycled. Much of the rest is dumped into African markets. That harms their economy, and it stops any chance of them developing their own industries because it's clothing that's just dumped on them. So my contention is that the environmental and social damage that this industry is causing is quite significant. So the question's got to be, is it worth it? So the average woman in the UK spends £768 a year on clothing. That's around £64 a month. Most bits of clothing are only worn 7 times, and then they're not worn again. In fact, somebody recently worked out that there's £30 billion worth of clothing, £30 billion worth of clothing sitting in our wardrobes that hasn't been worn for a year. So does buying this stuff make us happier? Well, survey after survey after survey suggests we're scratching an itch, but it's not improving our happiness. In fact, there was a recent survey in the US which found that 1 in 10 women, when they open their wardrobe, actually feel more depressed when they look at their clothes because they don't think they're sufficiently fashionable. So what I've been doing in the past 3 years with the new charity I've created is trying to question the industry and to find alternatives. But I don't want to be doom and gloom about it. I don't want to say you can't buy this, you shouldn't do this. We all deserve a fulfilling and rich lives. But can we do it in a way which doesn't trash the environment? And what's amazed me is that if you go out there with a bold statement, if you go and challenge the norm, but if you do it in a really positive way, you can build an amazing organisation. So I've been running Hubbub for 3 years. I started with £25,000. This year, the organisation's had a turnover of £1.5 million, purely because we have a set of principles that go out to challenge the norm. And on fashion, I think there's something that all of us can do when we go shopping and in our everyday lives that will change the norm and will challenge this industry. And that might be a courageous thing to do on a very small scale, but I think it's an important thing to do. So I've got 5 ideas for how we can start to challenge the fast fashion industry. The first one is to pause before you buy anything. Do you really need that piece of clothing? Is it something that is going to really enrich your lives? And what's the backstory to this bit of clothing? And this was done brilliantly in Berlin. This is a picture of a vending machine in Berlin. And it says, have a t-shirt, they're only €2. Lovely white t-shirt, €2. Put the money into the vending machine. And then if you do that, it says, oh, hang on a minute, just watch this film. And the film tells the backstory behind the t-shirt, that it was made in Bangladesh, the working conditions, and the amount of chemicals and water that was used to create that t-shirt. And then it says, do you really want to buy the t-shirt? And it's amazing the number of people who decide to donate their €2 to helping the garment workers rather than to buy the t-shirt. It's a great way of pausing and getting people to think before they buy. The second thing I think we should do is challenge. So there's this thing called Black Friday, which has been dumped onto the UK economy from the US, which basically encourages us to spend money we don't have on stuff we don't want. So we went to a whole load of universities and said, let's challenge Black Friday. Let's have Bright Friday. Let's do everything we possibly can to enjoy our lives, volunteering, meeting with friends, other than having a fight over a t-shirt in Primark. And we got students to create a magazine which basically shone the light on the absurdity of some of the things that the fashion magazines are selling us. So, can you buy happiness? No, you can't. And we got them to come up with loads of brilliant ideas about things that might happen if the fashion industry gets faster and faster and faster. So the one I liked best was a new company called Deliver Shoe, which basically delivers you shoes whenever you want them. And this could be a whole new way of taking fast fashion to an extreme level. So the second thing is challenge the industry. The third thing is gain new skills, regain lost skills. Clothing can be upcycled, it can be personalized, it can be made to look fantastic. You just have to learn some new skills to do that. So, we run an increasing number of workshops about upskilling and reskilling, bringing mainly women together to learn new skills that makes their clothing go further. And then there's sharing. There's lots of events called swishing or sharing where basically you can recycle or move around clothes that you perhaps no longer want, but somebody else might find it really interesting. We're doing a campaign at Halloween called So Spooky, S-E-W Spooky, which is about Halloween outfits. So rather than buying a Halloween outfit, why not swap and share what other people have got, saving you money and saving the environment. And we've run a campaign with Mother Care called Gift a Bundle, where we get mums together who've got beautiful outgrown baby clothing in their wardrobes. They get together with other mums, they create beautiful gift bags, they take them to Mother Care, and then at Mother's Day, they become a gift from a mother to another, handing out to those families who need those clothes more. So sharing is a really important part of the circular economy. And finally, make the most of your money. Big business is actually starting to move in the right direction. So this is a dress from H&M. Can anybody guess what it's made of? It's recycled ocean plastic. They fished plastics from the ocean and they created this amazing dress. They spend millions every year looking at what are the materials that we're going to be wearing in the future. So they've got some material they're making out of citrus peel, lemon and orange peel. It actually makes a beautiful material. So they're looking at ways to find new materials which are not so environmentally damaging. They're also, H&M, the biggest spender in the world on organic cotton. So there are certain companies, and I could name a few others in the fast fashion industry, that are making the right steps. And I think when you do go and spend your money, think about where that money can be spent that sends a really strong message to the fashion industry that people do care about this, and this is important for sort of the future of our environment and also for the well-being of garment makers across the world. So I was going to ask, have you changed your mind? But I hadn't got a lot to go on because basically all of you were agreeing with me in the first place. But what I hope is that what I've shown you is that there is a different way to think about fashion, that we need to think about the environmental and social impacts of the fashion industry, that sometimes it takes courage to question the mainstream, but it also takes courage on a very small step to think about daily habits, daily routines, shopping patterns, things you do in your everyday life. So courage can be at a very small level, but if we all do it together, many of us, it will send a stark message which can transform a bigger industry. Thank you.